Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when you realize that not every battle is meant to be fought with noise. Some battles are won in silence, in discipline, and in self-mastery. Today, we are not just talking about difficult people, we are talking about who you become when faced with them, because when you challenge toxic behavior with wisdom instead of reaction, you step into a higher version of yourself. And that is where true power lives. There is a powerful truth that many people overlook. The moment you begin to understand yourself, you stop becoming easy to control. Self-awareness is not just about knowing your strengths or weaknesses. It is about recognizing your emotional patterns, your triggers, and the subtle ways your energy is influenced by others. When you walk through life without awareness, you react automatically. Someone says something disrespectful, and you feel the urge to defend yourself instantly. Someone tries to provoke you, and you feel pulled into an emotional response before you even think. In that state, you're not in control. Your emotions are. And anyone who understands that can manipulate your reactions. But when you become self-aware, something shifts. You begin to pause before reacting. You begin to observe instead of absorb. You start asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? Is this response helping me, or is it taking something away from me? That pause, that moment of reflection is where your power is born. Emotional intelligence is the discipline that grows from that awareness. It is not about suppressing your feelings or pretending they don't exist. It is about understanding them deeply enough that they no longer control your behavior. You feel anger, but you choose calm. You feel hurt, but you choose clarity. You feel pressure, but you choose patience. This is what separates those who are constantly drained from those who remain grounded. When you are emotionally intelligent, you stop personalizing everything. You begin to recognize that not every negative action directed toward you is actually about you. Sometimes it is a reflection of the other person's insecurity, their need for control, or their lack of inner peace. And when you see that clearly, you no longer feel the need to engage in unnecessary battles. Instead of reacting to noise, you respond with intention. This changes the way you communicate. Your words become measured, purposeful, and calm. You no longer speak to prove a point. You speak to maintain your position. You no longer argue to win. You choose when something is worth your energy. And here is where it becomes even more powerful. When you control your internal state, you become unpredictable to those who rely on emotional reactions. They expect frustration, but they get calm. They expect defensiveness, but they get silence. They expect chaos, but they meet stability. That stability becomes your shield. People who thrive on reactions lose their influence when there is no reaction to feed on. And the more grounded you become, the less accessible you are to emotional manipulation. But this level of awareness requires discipline. You must be willing to sit with your emotions instead of acting on them immediately. You must be willing to reflect on your behavior and take responsibility for your responses. You must be willing to grow beyond the version of yourself that reacts impulsively. Growth is not always comfortable. Sometimes it means admitting that you have been giving your energy away too easily. Sometimes it means realizing that your kindness has lacked boundaries. Sometimes it means choosing silence when you would rather speak, or walking away when you would rather stay. But every time you make that choice, you strengthen your control. And over time, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel less drained. You begin to feel more centered. Situations that once overwhelmed you no longer have the same effect. Conversations that once triggered you no longer shake your peace. You are no longer easily pulled into emotional storms because you have learned how to stand firm within yourself. This is not weakness. This is mastery. Because real strength is not about overpowering others. It is about governing yourself. It is about having the ability to feel deeply without being controlled by those feelings. It is about maintaining your clarity even when others try to disrupt it. And when you reach that level, your presence changes. You walk into environments with a quiet confidence. You speak with calm authority. You respond with intention rather than impulse. And without saying a word, people begin to recognize that you are not easily influenced. That is the power of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. It is not loud, but it is undeniable. It is not aggressive, but it is unshakable. It does not demand respect. It naturally commands it. And once you develop it, you realize something important. No one can control a person who understands themselves. There is something extraordinary about a person who feels deeply in a world that often rewards indifference, to feel, to understand, to connect on an emotional level. These are not weaknesses. These are rare abilities. But the problem is, many people who possess this depth have been taught to see it as a burden instead of a gift. From a young age, you may have been told that you are too sensitive, that you care too much, or that you should toughen up. Over time, those words begin to shape your identity. You start believing that your ability to feel is something you need to suppress, something that makes you vulnerable in the wrong way. But let's correct that misunderstanding right now. Your depth is not the problem. Your lack of boundaries around that depth is. When you truly understand your value, you begin to see that your empathy is not meant to be given to everyone equally. It is not meant to be drained by those who do not respect it. It is not meant to be used against you by people who recognize your kindness, but refuse to honor it. Your value lies in your ability to feel without losing yourself. There is a difference between being compassionate and being consumed. Compassion allows you to understand others while still standing firm in who you are. Being consumed means you absorb everything around you, leaving yourself exhausted, overwhelmed, and disconnected from your own needs. You must learn the difference, because the moment you start valuing yourself, you stop giving unlimited access to your energy. You begin to realize that not everyone deserves your time, your attention, or your emotional investment. And that realization is not arrogance, it is wisdom. You see, people who do not recognize your worth will always try to benefit from your presence without contributing to your peace. They will take your kindness as permission to overstep. They will interpret your patience as weakness. They will expect you to keep giving, even when it costs you everything. But when you understand your value, you change the rules. You no longer feel obligated to explain your boundaries. You no longer feel guilty for choosing yourself. You no longer stay in situations that consistently drain your energy just because you understand the other person. Understanding someone does not require you to tolerate behavior that harms you. This is where your transformation begins. You begin to shift from seeking approval to maintaining alignment. You stop asking, how can I make them understand me? And start asking, is this situation aligned with who I am becoming? That shift changes everything. Because now your decisions are no longer driven by fear of rejection or desire for acceptance. They are driven by clarity and self-respect. And with that clarity comes confidence. Not the loud, attention-seeking kind, but a quiet, grounded confidence that does not need validation to exist. You begin to trust your instincts. You begin to recognize when something feels off. And instead of ignoring it, you honor it. You begin to walk away from environments that do not support your growth, even when it is difficult. And yes, it will be difficult. There will be moments when choosing yourself feels uncomfortable. There will be times when you question whether you are being too distant, too firm, or too selective. But understand this: growth often feels unfamiliar before it feels natural. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming clear, and clarity protects you. When you know your value, you no longer try to prove it. You no longer overextend yourself to be seen, heard, or appreciated. You simply operate from a place of certainty, and that certainty speaks louder than any explanation ever could. People will begin to notice the difference. They will notice that you are no longer easily influenced. They will notice that your energy is no longer available on demand. They will notice that you carry yourself with a sense of self-respect that cannot be negotiated. And here's the truth: not everyone will like that version of you. Some people benefited from the version of you that lacked boundaries. Some people were comfortable when you overgave and underprotected yourself. And when you change, when you grow, when you start valuing yourself, they may resist it. But that resistance is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are evolving. Because the right people, the ones who respect, appreciate, and align with your energy, will not be threatened by your boundaries. They will honor them. They will meet you at your level. They will recognize your worth without you having to fight for it. And that is where your energy belongs. You must understand this deeply. Your value is not determined by how much you give, how much you tolerate, or how much you sacrifice. Your value is inherent. It exists within you, independent of anyone's opinion or treatment. And once you truly believe that, everything changes. You stop chasing validation. You stop accepting less than you deserve. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that cannot hold your growth. Instead, you expand. You become more intentional with your time, more protective of your energy, more aligned with your purpose. And in that alignment, you discover something powerful. You were never too much. You were simply giving too much to the wrong places. When you recognize your value, you don't lose your empathy. You refine it. You don't stop caring. You become more selective about where your care goes. And that is not weakness. That is strength, guided by wisdom. There is a silent trap that many people fall into without even realizing it. And it is this: the belief that every situation deserves an emotional reaction. The truth is, not everything that happens to you requires a response, and certainly not an emotional one. When you react emotionally without awareness, you hand over your power. You allow external situations and people to dictate your internal state. One comment can ruin your mood. One action can disrupt your peace. One moment can throw off your entire day. And in that state, you are no longer leading your life. You are responding to it. But here is the deeper reality. Emotional reactions are predictable, and anything predictable can be controlled. There are individuals who understand this pattern very well. They know that if they push a certain button, you will respond in a certain way. They know what frustrates you, what triggers you, what makes you defend yourself. And once they know that, they don't need to overpower you. They simply need to provoke you. And the moment you react without thinking, the moment your emotions take over, you step into their frame instead of maintaining your own. This is why emotional discipline is not optional. It is essential. Now understand this clearly. Controlling your reactions does not mean suppressing your feelings. It does not mean pretending that something does not affect you. It means that you acknowledge what you feel, but you do not allow it to control how you behave. There is a powerful difference between feeling and reacting. You can feel anger and still choose silence. You can feel frustration and still choose patience. You can feel disrespected and still choose composure. And in that choice, that moment between feeling and action, you reclaim your authority. Because the strongest person in any situation is not the one who reacts the fastest. It is the one who responds with intention. When you stop reacting emotionally, something remarkable happens. You become harder to influence. People who once relied on your reactions to control the situation begin to lose their advantage. They expect a certain response, but they no longer receive it. And when their expectations are not met, their strategy begins to fall apart. Your calm becomes disruptive to their pattern. Think about it. When someone is trying to provoke you and you remain composed, it creates a shift. The energy they were trying to pull from you is no longer available. The control they thought they had begins to slip. And suddenly the situation changes. Not because you fought harder, but because you refuse to engage on the same level. This is not about winning arguments. It is about maintaining your position. Because when you react emotionally, you are pulled into chaos. Your focus shifts from clarity to defense. Your words become less intentional. Your actions become less controlled. And in that moment, you're no longer operating from strength. You are operating from impulse. But when you respond with awareness, you remain grounded. You listen more than you speak. You observe more than you react. You choose your words carefully, or sometimes you choose not to speak at all. And that silence, that controlled, intentional silence, is often more powerful than any argument you could make. There is a discipline in walking away from situations that are designed to pull you out of your character. There is strength in refusing to match the energy that is being directed at you. And there is wisdom in knowing that not every confrontation deserves your participation. You must understand this. Peace is not something you find. It is something you protect. And you protect it by managing your responses. This does not mean you allow disrespect. It means you address it from a place of control, not emotion. You speak firmly, clearly, and without unnecessary escalation. You do not raise your voice to be heard. You speak with authority so that your words carry weight. Because authority does not come from volume. It comes from composure. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. At first it may feel uncomfortable. You may feel the urge to react react, to defend, to explain. You may feel like staying silent means losing, but over time, you begin to see the bigger picture. You realize that not reacting is not weakness, it is strategy. You realize that maintaining your composure gives you more control than any emotional outburst ever could. And you begin to notice something important. The less you react, the less people try to provoke you, because they no longer receive the response they are looking for. Your energy becomes protected, your focus becomes sharper, your presence becomes stronger, and eventually you reach a point where situations that once triggered you no longer have the same effect. You are not easily shaken. You are not easily pulled into unnecessary conflict. You are not easily influenced by external pressure. You become stable. And stability is power, because a stable person cannot be easily controlled. A stable mind cannot be easily manipulated. A stable presence cannot be easily disrupted. So you must train yourself to pause before you speak, pause before you react, pause before you engage, pause. In that pause, you create space for awareness. In that awareness, you make better choices. And in those choices, you protect your power. Because at the end of the day, it is not what happens to you that defines your strength. It is how you respond to it. And when you master your responses, you master your life. There is a powerful shift that happens in your life when you begin to understand that access to you is a privilege, not a right. And yet many people move through life as if they owe everyone unlimited availability, unlimited time, unlimited energy, unlimited patience. They say yes when they mean no. They tolerate what they should reject. They allow behaviors that slowly drain their spirit, all in the name of being kind, understanding, or accommodating. But true strength is not found in how much you tolerate. It is found in what you are no longer willing to accept. Boundaries are not walls designed to keep people out. They are standards designed to define what is allowed in. And when you lack boundaries, you do not create connection. You create confusion. You teach people that your time is always available, your energy is always accessible, and your limits do not exist. And people will always operate based on what you allow. If you allow disrespect, it becomes a pattern. If you allow overstepping, it becomes expected. If you allow yourself to be drained, it becomes normalized. This is why boundaries are not just important, they are necessary. But here is where many struggle. They associate boundaries with conflict. They believe that setting limits will push people away, create tension, or make them seem difficult. And so they avoid setting them altogether. They stay silent when they should speak. They endure when they should walk away. They adjust themselves to keep the peace, not realizing that in doing so, they are sacrificing their own. But let's be clear, avoiding boundaries does not create peace. It creates resentment, because every time you ignore your limits, every time you allow something that goes against your values, a part of you begins to feel overlooked. That frustration builds quietly. It may not show immediately, but over time it grows. And eventually what could have been addressed with calm clarity turns into emotional exhaustion. Boundaries prevent that. They allow you to communicate your needs clearly without waiting until you are overwhelmed. They give structure to your relationships. They create an environment where respect can exist, because expectations are no longer assumed. They are expressed. And here's the most important part. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about controlling yourself. You cannot force someone to respect you, but you can decide what you will tolerate. You can decide how you respond when someone crosses a line. You can decide whether you stay in an environment that consistently drains you or whether you step away from it. That decision is your power. When you set boundaries, you are not asking for permission. You are making a statement about your standards. You are saying, this is what I accept. This is what I do not allow. And you say it not with anger, not with aggression, but with calm certainty. Because boundaries do not need to be loud to be effective. They need to be consistent. Consistency is what gives your words weight. If you say you need space, but you continue to allow interruptions, your boundary becomes unclear. If you say you value respect, but you tolerate repeated disrespect, your standard becomes negotiable. People learn how to treat you by observing what you enforce, not just what you say. This is why discipline is essential. You must be willing to follow through, even when it feels uncomfortable. You must be willing to stand firm even when others push back. And understand this, there will be pushback. When you begin to set boundaries, especially if you have not done so before, people may resist. They may question you, challenge you, or try to make you feel guilty for changing. Not because you are wrong, but because they were comfortable with the version of you that had no limits. But growth requires change. And not everyone will be comfortable with your growth. Some people will respect your boundaries immediately. Others will test them. And some will walk away because they no longer have the same access they once did. And that is okay, because boundaries are not meant to keep everyone. They are meant to reveal who belongs. The people who respect your limits are the ones who value you. The people who ignore them are the ones who benefited from your lack of them. And once you understand that, you stop feeling guilty for choosing yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying your decisions. You stop seeking approval for protecting your energy. You simply act. You say no when necessary. You take space when needed. You remove yourself from situations that do not align with your well-being. And in doing so, you begin to feel something you may not have felt in a long time. Peace. Not the temporary peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the lasting peace that comes from living in alignment with your values. You begin to feel lighter, more in control, more grounded, because you are no longer carrying the weight of other people's expectations at the cost of your own needs. This is what boundaries give you. They give you clarity in your relationships. They give you control over your time and energy. They give you the ability to exist without constantly feeling drained. And most importantly, they give you self-respect. Because every time you enforce a boundary, you send a message to yourself. I matter, my energy matters, my peace matters. And that message changes the way you live. So do not be afraid to set limits. Do not hesitate to protect your space. Do not feel guilty for choosing what is best for your well-being. Because the moment you start honoring your boundaries is the moment you start honoring yourself. There is a level of strength that very few people truly understand. And it is not found in raising your voice, proving a point, or overpowering someone in a moment of tension. Real strength is revealed in your ability to remain calm when everything around you is trying to pull you out of that calm. Most people believe that the louder voice wins, that the stronger argument dominates, that the one who reacts fastest holds the power. But that is not authority. That is noise. Authority is quiet, controlled, and intentional. It does not rush. It does not chase. It does not need to prove itself through emotional intensity. When you respond with calm authority, you shift the entire dynamic of any interaction. You are no longer participating in chaos. You are directing the tone of the moment. But to reach that level, you must first understand this. Reacting is easy. Anyone can react. Anyone can raise their voice, defend themselves instantly, or get pulled into an emotional exchange. It requires no discipline, no awareness, no control. But responding, that is different. Responding requires you to pause. It requires you to think. It requires you to separate what you feel from what you choose to express. And in that separation, you gain clarity. Because not every situation deserves the same level of response. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Sometimes it is a simple, direct statement. Sometimes it is choosing not to engage at all. But whatever you choose, it comes from intention, not impulse. When you develop calm authority, your words carry more weight because they are not driven by emotion. They are measured, precise, and grounded. You do not speak to release tension. You speak to communicate clearly. And clarity is powerful, because when you are clear, there is no confusion. You are not sending mixed signals. You are not over-explaining or trying to convince others to understand you. You are simply stating your position with confidence and leaving it at that. This changes how people perceive you. When someone is used to getting emotional reactions and suddenly they are met with calm composure, it disrupts their expectations. They may try to push harder, to provoke more, to draw you into a reaction. But when you remain steady, they begin to realize that their usual approach no longer works. Your calm becomes a boundary in itself. It communicates that you are not easily shaken. It shows that you are not operating on the same emotional level. And without saying it directly, it establishes a form of respect that cannot be forced. It is earned through your presence. But understand this, Calm authority is not passive. It is not about being silent in the face of everything. It is about choosing when and how to speak in a way that maintains your control. You do not ignore issues. You address them without losing your composure. You do not avoid difficult conversations. You navigate them with clarity. You do not allow disrespect, but you correct it without becoming disrespectful yourself. This is where many people struggle. They believe that to assert themselves, they must match the intensity of the situation. They believe that to be heard, they must be louder, more forceful, more aggressive. But aggression often weakens your position, because when you become emotional, your message becomes less effective. Your words lose structure. Your focus shifts. And instead of leading the interaction, you become part of the chaos. Calm authority does the opposite. It keeps you grounded. It keeps your message intact. It keeps you in control. And control is what allows you to lead. When you speak from a place of calm authority, you are not trying to dominate. You are setting the standard for how you will be treated. You are communicating that you are aware, composed, and intentional, and people respond differently to that energy. They listen more carefully. They choose their words more thoughtfully. They recognize that you are not easily influenced. But this level of composure requires practice. You must train yourself to slow down in moments of tension. You must become comfortable with pauses. You must resist the urge to fill silence with unnecessary words, because sometimes the pause itself is what gives your response its power. You must also learn to detach from the need to win, because calm authority is not about winning arguments. It is about maintaining your position. It is about staying aligned with your values, regardless of how the other person behaves. You do not need everyone to agree with you. You do not need to convince everyone of your perspective. You do not need to engage in every disagreement. You only need to remain consistent in how you carry yourself. And over time, that consistency builds something strong. It builds presence. A presence that is not easily disrupted. A presence that commands attention without demanding it. A presence that communicates strength without needing to display it. This is the kind of presence that changes environments. When you walk into a space with calm authority, you influence the tone without saying a word. People sense your stability. They recognize your composure, and they adjust accordingly. Not because you force them to, but because your energy sets a standard. And that is the goal, to become someone who does not need to react to every situation, but instead responds with purpose. To become someone who does not get pulled into unnecessary conflict, but instead navigates challenges with clarity. To become someone who does not lose control under pressure, but instead becomes more grounded because of it. That is what makes you powerful. Not how loudly you speak, but how clearly you communicate. Not how quickly you react, but how intentionally you respond. Not how forcefully you assert yourself, but how consistently you maintain your composure. Because at the end of the day, calm authority is not something you perform. It is something you become. And once you become it, no situation can easily take it away from you. That is something you must understand. If you truly want to live with clarity and strength, your energy is one of your most valuable assets. It determines how you think, how you feel, how you act, and ultimately the direction of your life. Yet many people give it away carelessly without realizing the cost. Every conversation you engage in, every environment you stay in, every person you allow close to you, these things either contribute to your energy or they drain it. And if you're not intentional, you will find yourself constantly exhausted, not because you are doing too much, but because you are giving too much to the wrong places. Protecting your peace is not a luxury. It is a responsibility. But here is where many people misunderstand this concept. They believe that protecting their peace means avoiding all discomfort, staying away from every difficult situation, or isolating themselves from others. That is not peace. That is avoidance. True peace is not the absence of challenges. It is the presence of stability within them. You can be in a demanding environment and still maintain your peace. You can face difficult people and still remain grounded. You can experience pressure and still operate with clarity. The difference lies in how well you protect your internal state, because peace is not something that comes from the outside. It is something you build and maintain from within. And to protect it, you must first become aware of what disrupts it. There are patterns, behaviors, and situations that consistently pull you out of alignment. Maybe it is constant negativity. Maybe it is unnecessary drama. Maybe it is people who demand your attention but do not respect you, do not respect your boundaries. Whatever it is, you must identify it clearly, because you cannot protect what you do not recognize. Once you become aware, the next step is discipline. You must be willing to limit your exposure to what drains you. That does not always mean cutting people off completely. It means creating distance where necessary, reducing engagement where possible, and refusing to invest energy where it is not valued. And this requires courage, because sometimes the things that drain you are familiar. They are comfortable in their own way. You may have built habits around them. You may feel obligated to maintain certain connections. You may fear what will happen if you step back. But understand this, familiarity does not equal alignment. Just because something has been part of your life for a long time does not mean it belongs in your future. Growth often requires separation. It requires you to let go of patterns that no longer serve you. It requires you to outgrow environments that limit you. It requires you to choose your well-being over your comfort. And that is not easy. There will be moments when you feel guilty for pulling back. There will be times when you question whether you are being too distant, too selective, or too protective. But protecting your peace is not about rejecting others. It is about respecting yourself. You are not responsible for managing everyone's expectations. You are not obligated to carry everyone's emotional weight. You are not required to stay in situations that consistently drain you. Your responsibility is to maintain your clarity. And clarity requires space. You need space to think without constant interruption. You need space to reflect without external noise. You need space to recharge without being pulled in different directions. This is why solitude, when used correctly, becomes powerful. It is not about isolation, it is about restoration. When you step back and give yourself time to reset, you strengthen your ability to return with focus. You become less reactive, more intentional, and more aligned with your purpose. And when you operate from that place, your decisions improve. You begin to choose where you invest your time more carefully. You become selective about the conversations you engage in. You stop entertaining situations that do not contribute to your growth. And over time, the selectiveness creates a shift. Your environment begins to change. Your interactions become more meaningful. Your energy becomes more stable because you are no longer available to everything. You are intentional about where you show up. And that intentionality protects your peace. But here is something even deeper. Protecting your peace is not just about what you avoid. It is also about what you cultivate. You must actively build habits that support your stability. You must develop routines that center you. You must engage in activities that restore your energy. You must surround yourself with influences that encourage your growth. Because peace is not just maintained by removing negativity. It is strengthened by adding what nourishes you. And the more you invest in what strengthens you, the less impact external negativity has on you. You become less affected by distractions, less influenced by chaos, less dependent on external validation. You become grounded. And a grounded person is not easily shaken. Situations may change, people may behave unpredictably, challenges may arise, but your internal state remains steady. You do not lose yourself in every circumstance. You do not allow every situation to dictate how you feel. You remain centered. That is power. Because when your peace is protected, your focus sharpens. When your focus sharpens, your decisions improve. When your decisions improve, your life moves in a better direction. Everything begins with your internal state, so you must guard it. Not with fear, but with awareness. Not with isolation, but with intention. Not with avoidance, but with discipline. Because the world will always present distractions. There will always be noise, negativity, and pressure. But you have a choice in how much of it you allow into your space. And the more intentional you become, the more you realize something important. Peace is not fragile. It is powerful, but only if you protect it. There is a perspective that can completely transform the way you experience life, and it is this: not every challenge is sent to break you. Some are sent to reveal you. Most people, when faced with difficult situations or difficult individuals, immediately ask, why is this happening to me? That question places you in a position of resistance. It makes you feel like a victim of circumstances, as though life is working against you. And when you operate from that mindset, every challenge feels heavier, every obstacle feels personal, and every struggle feels unfair. But there is a more powerful question you can ask. That shift from resistance to reflection changes everything. Because now, instead of seeing the situation as something that is happening to you, you begin to see it as something that is working for you. Not in a comfortable way, not in an easy way, but in a way that develops your awareness, your discipline, and your strength. Challenges have a way of exposing what is hidden. They reveal your triggers, they highlight your habits, they show you where you lack boundaries, where you overextend yourself, and where you still seek validation. And while that may feel uncomfortable, it is also valuable, because what is revealed can be refined. Think about it. If you were never challenged, you would never grow beyond your current level. You would remain in the same patterns, the same reactions, the same limitations. It is pressure that forces expansion. It is discomfort that creates awareness. It is challenge that demands change, but only if you are willing to learn from it. Many people go through difficult situations repeatedly, not because life is unfair, but because they have not yet understood the lesson. They react the same way, make the same decisions, tolerate the same patterns, and then wonder why the outcome never changes. Growth requires a different response. It requires you to step back and evaluate. Instead of asking, how do I escape this? You begin to ask, what do I need to adjust? Instead of blaming the situation, you begin to examine your role within it. Not in a way that places unnecessary guilt on yourself, but in a way that gives you control over what you can improve. Because while you cannot always control what happens, you can always control how you evolve. And evolution is the goal. Every challenge you face carries an opportunity to become more aware, more disciplined, more intentional. But that opportunity is only realized when you choose growth over comfort. And growth is not always convenient. Sometimes it requires you to confront parts of yourself that you have ignored. Sometimes it requires you to let go of habits that once felt familiar. Sometimes it requires you to change your approach, even when it feels uncomfortable. But within that discomfort is transformation. You begin to develop resilience, the ability to remain steady under pressure. You begin to build clarity, the ability to see situations for what they truly are, not just how they feel. You begin to strengthen your discipline. Ability to act intentionally rather than react impulsively. And these qualities compound over time. The more you learn from challenges, the less they overwhelm you. Situations that once felt difficult become manageable. Problems that once seemed complex become clear. You begin to navigate life with a different mindset, one that is focused on growth rather than resistance. And with that mindset comes confidence. Not the kind of confidence that is based on external success, but the kind that is rooted in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. You trust yourself more because you have seen your ability to adapt, to learn, and to rise above situations that once challenged you. That trust becomes your foundation, because now when you encounter difficulty, you do not immediately feel defeated. You become curious, you observe, you analyze, you ask yourself, what can I gain from this? And that question keeps you moving forward. It prevents you from becoming stuck in frustration. It shifts your focus from the problem to the process. It allows you to extract value from situations that others might simply try to avoid. And over time, this approach changes your entire outlook. You stop fearing challenges. You stop avoiding discomfort. You stop seeing obstacles as interruptions. Instead, you begin to see them as part of your development. You realize that every experience, whether positive or negative, contributes to who you are becoming. Every interaction teaches you something. Every difficulty strengthens a part of you that would otherwise remain undeveloped. And this realization gives you an advantage, because while others are overwhelmed by challenges, you are learning from them. While others are reacting emotionally, you are responding with awareness. While others are trying to escape discomfort, You are using it as a tool for growth. That is what separates those who remain stagnant from those who evolve. It is not the absence of challenges. It is the interpretation of them. So the next time you face a difficult situation, pause. Do not rush to react. Do not immediately resist. Do not assume it is against you. Instead, ask yourself, what is this showing me? Because within that question lies your growth. And within that growth lies your strength. Because the person who learns from every challenge becomes someone who cannot be easily shaken, easily discouraged, or easily stopped. They become someone who moves forward with purpose, regardless of the obstacles in their path. And that is the kind of person you are capable of becoming. There is a truth that stands above all others when it comes to growth, strength, and lasting success. And it is this: the greatest victory you will ever achieve is not over another person, it is over yourself. Many people spend their lives trying to prove something to others. They want to win arguments, gain approval, establish dominance, or show that they are right. They measure success by how they are perceived, how they are treated, and how they compare to those around them. But this way of thinking keeps you trapped because it places your sense of power in the hands of external outcomes. True power does not come from controlling others. It comes from mastering yourself. Because no matter how many situations you win externally, if you cannot control your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions, you are still vulnerable. You are still easily influenced. You are still dependent on circumstances to determine your state of mind. Self-mastery changes that. It shifts your focus inward. It moves your attention from what others are doing to how you are responding. It places responsibility back into your hands where it belongs. And in doing so, it gives you something that no external victory ever could: stability. When you begin the journey of mastering yourself, you quickly realize that the real challenges are internal. It is the discipline to stay calm when you feel provoked. It is the strength to walk away when your ego wants to engage. It is the awareness to recognize when your emotions are trying to take control. These are not easy things. Because your mind is conditioned by habits. Your reactions are shaped by past experiences. Your impulses are influenced by your environment. And breaking those patterns requires intention, effort, and consistency. But this is where transformation begins. You start to observe yourself more closely. You notice how you respond under pressure. You become aware of the moments when you feel triggered, when your patience is tested, when your focus is challenged. And instead of acting immediately, you begin to question your response. Is this aligned with who I want to become? Is this reaction helping me, or is it taking something away from me? Those questions create a pause, and in that pause, you gain control. Because self-mastery is not about never feeling anything. It is about choosing what you do with what you feel. You will still experience frustration. You will still encounter challenges. You will still face moments that test your limits. But instead of being controlled by those moments, you begin to direct them. You choose patience over impulse. You choose clarity over confusion. You choose discipline over distraction. And each time you make that choice, you strengthen your control. It is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. Every day you are faced with opportunities to either reinforce your discipline or fall back into old patterns. Every interaction, every challenge, every moment of pressure is a test of your ability to remain aligned with your values. And the more you pass those tests, the more natural it becomes. You begin to notice that you are less reactive, less easily distracted, less influenced by external noise. You become more focused, more intentional, more grounded. And this consistency builds something powerful. Trust in yourself. You trust that you can handle pressure without losing control. You trust that you can face challenges without becoming overwhelmed. You trust that you can make decisions that align with your long-term growth rather than your short-term emotions. That trust becomes your foundation, because when you trust yourself, you do not need constant validation from others. You do not need approval to move forward. You do not need to prove your worth through external achievements. You operate from a place of certainty, and that certainty is what allows you to remain steady even when everything around you is uncertain. This is what separates those who are easily shaken from those who are unshakable. It is not their circumstances, it is their control. A person who has mastered themselves does not lose direction when faced with difficulty. They do not abandon their principles when challenged. They do not compromise their values for temporary comfort. They remain consistent. And consistency is what builds strength over time. Because every time you choose discipline over impulse, you reinforce your identity. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you expand your capacity. Every time you choose clarity over reaction, you strengthen your control. And those small decisions compound. They shape your character. They define your habits. They determine your future. So you must understand this deeply. Your life is not shaped by a few major moments. It is shaped by the small choices you make every day. The choice to stay focused when distractions appear, the choice to remain calm when pressure rises, the choice to act with intention when emotions are high. These are the choices that build self-mastery. And as you continue to make them, you begin to realize something profound. You no longer need to win against others to feel powerful, because you have already won within yourself. You are no longer controlled by every emotion. You are no longer influenced by every opinion. You are no longer shaken by every challenge. You are stable. You are disciplined. You are in control. And that is the highest level of power you can achieve, because when you master yourself, nothing outside of you can easily master you.